I'm going to go now to the commissioner candidates, and I think I'm going to kind of change the order up a little bit. I'll start with you, Lou. Property taxes are a significant source of revenue for Bonner County and burdensome to homeowners. What is your approach to managing the county budget and ensuring fiscal responsibility while meeting the needs of residents? And I'm going to give you 2 minutes to talk about that.
Property taxes also equate to services. It is exceedingly difficult to talk about the burden that is currently placed on county government, because I will tell you that both candidates for the sheriff are right in that we need more public safety. We also need to be able to pay for them. You're going to probably hear Sheriff Wheeler talk about the consequences of the free market. When I moved here in 1980, there was 943,079, but I'm looking at the census. There was 943,000 people in Idaho. There are currently 1.9 million people in Idaho. Bonner County in 1980, according to the census, had 24,000 people. In 2024, we are currently talking at approximately 53,000 people. When we bring that into the services that the county is statutorily obligated to provide, which primarily goes from the levy, goes to personnel, of which the majority goes to 2 departments. It goes to the justice, which is the sheriff, the coroner, and the prosecutor, and road and bridge. A very simple example in regards to that is we used to plow the roads when there was approximately 2 inches of snow. Now, because of the additional amount of use of our infrastructure, we are utilizing that we plow the roads at approximately a ½ inch to 1 inch. Every single cost has gone up. We have maintained our services, and we have maintained prudent fiscal responsibility. More people bring a greater demand upon your system, and we are careful to do so, but I am committed to providing you the services that are obligated to us by the legislature.
Let's go to Dimitri.
This is a pretty big question. We all pay taxes, and the big question is how are taxes being spent? Are they spent to promote special interest groups, or are they spent to promote or improving quality of life of Bonner County residents? We have a growth that is coming, but we have no infrastructure in place. We as taxpayers who live here pretty much footing the bill for upcoming growth and for new developments. We need to start talking about perhaps impact fees, so new developers can pay some money for the infrastructure, so that there's less burden on the current taxpayers. And we also need to address the issue of spending the county money where they need to be spent. And I'll give you a quick example. There's 4 transport EMS agencies, and 3 of them are volunteer agencies, and they are saving county almost $2 million a year. And but those areas, the residents of those areas are putting about $750,000 a year into county coffers. And when Priest Lake Ambulance says, please give us tax money back to our community so we can build a new building, so we can provide a better service to our community, county commissioners says no. The fight was 6 years. And finally, last year, Chief of EMS, Lindsay, was able to find a way to build a building for the Priest Lake Ambulance. And what do the commissioners do? They shut it down. They said no. They do not see outlying communities in need of approved services, and yet they'll be bragging about spending federal money in the downtown of Sandpoint.
So I would hope, and I would totally support, especially if I'm elected county commissioner, and I would hope the board would be on board, to supporting our state legislators to possibly do something about our property taxes and maybe be able to do away with those and actually implement some type of a sales tax. Because as long as we have our property taxes, we never really own our property, do we? I see every year, I don't like reading the B a whole lot, but when I do, I flip through the back and the notices in the back, the legal notices, and I see properties that are going up for sale for tax lien that the sheriff has seized because the property owner failed to pay their property taxes for one reason or another. I think it's just wrong, especially our elderly people that have been here for such a long time living on a fixed budget, that they run the risk of losing their family house or family farm because of taxes. That being said, what we're gonna have to address right away is the fact that our Bidenomics is causing a lot of inflation, and I'm gonna use a conservative number of 10%. So if we have a 10% inflation rate going on right now, and our county budget is only legally to be raised 3%, that leaves us with a 7% deficit just to keep providing the services that we have today. I don't see that happening without getting into those budgets of all the departments and the elected officials and seeing where we can cut a minimum of 10% so that we can actually hold our own or even start working backwards a little bit. I do think that there is plenty of fat in that budget. Our Constitution says that government is to provide infrastructure and public safety, and that's about the extent of it. Thank you.
Let's go to Brian Donkey.
So first and foremost, I think we need to begin by looking at each budget that is going to be approved annually to determine, is that indeed a statutory requirement? And then if it is, if therefore it's something that we're obligated to do, we need to determine performance metrics, treat this like business. We need to say, what are our performance expectations for each department, for each service being provided? And then measure that. If we're not meeting the standard, then we need to have a corrective action plan. And this needs to be done in a way that's publicly encouraged. We want staff, we want electeds to be accountable and responsible, and we want to do it in a way that we're encouraging people to perform well. But we have to measure to know if the performance is there. And so I believe that we need to create metrics, measure to determine if we're actually meeting that performance standard, and if we're not, we need to correct. That's the approach I would take. Brian Donkey, thank you.
Property taxes are a big deal. I've been saying that this entire campaign. My family had a section of ground back in the 30s and 40s out in Samuels towards Pack River. Well, my Uncle Tom, he was the one that owned it. Well, when he passed away, it got handed down to his kids, and they couldn't afford the property taxes. So you know how much out of the 200 plus acres we still have in our family? Zero. It all went back, it all got sold off just because of the costs. So what can I do about that as a county commissioner if I'm elected? Well, you heard me say earlier that I ran the Laclede Mill down the road. That's a private industry. I had a $2 million a month budget to work with. That was operating. And the way it works in the timber industry is it's a commodity. So the price of the lumber, it doesn't matter what you're paying at the store. What you can sell it for is basically comes from the stock market, in the futures market. So we had to watch our budgets very conservatively, right down to the point. So I understand the need to have versus the want to haves. And when it came down to our budget making processes per department, we always asked the 5 whys. Why do we need this? What are those costs? Where did they go from last year to this year that you need an extra 10%? Well, if I look up the CPI and what's actually happened to this type of market, it actually fell 5%. So why are you telling me we need 10% more? Those were questions that we actually sat down department by department and asked to make sure that the company money was being spent appropriately and very conservatively. It's a lot different in the private industry and business, because if you aren't watching those dollars and cents, well, you don't last very long as a manager. When you're elected into this position, you get 2 or 4 years to show if you can or you can't make a difference. That's one difference. One thing that I would be used to is having to show those results immediately. Thank you.
Thank you. So we promised you all a 30 additional seconds if there's something you forgot to say or feel it's important to say. And I'm gonna ask everybody when they're doing their speaking to hold your applause, if you can, till we get to the end of the day. Thank you. So I'm gonna start again with Luke, if there's anything more you wanna add.
There is. I'd like to address a couple of things. One, in regards to the way that I started off speaking about logistics. We base where we station paramedics based upon the data. And there is a paramedic that is stationed up in Priest Lake during the summer when the numbers warrant. There is also one where we just signed a $50 a month paramedic at the Sam Owens Fire Station. It's based on the data so that we don't have to hire unnecessary positions. I am totally opposed to operating very many elements of the county like a business because I'm not interested in profiting. But I will also say that there were no property tax sales last year because of the diligence of your elected officials.
The taxes is actually a state issue, and it's up to legislature to decide how they would like to address that issue. And once they do, they need to make it easier for county commissioners to make decisions how to proceed forward. But we need to have a plan on how prudently spend taxpayers' money and put money back into communities where they came from. Thank you.
So I've been a volunteer in Bonner County for 25 years. Our volunteer forces have been dwindling rapidly, and a lot of it is due to money. It's due to government agencies not being able to profit off of volunteers. So they do away with them, and then they actually qualify for more grants and more federal money, yada, yada, yada. I would like to bring back volunteers to the community. People actually want to help. They want to get involved. We need to give them the opportunity. So, and also, whatever happened to personal responsibility? I live a half hour out of town. I don't need an EMS station within 5 miles of my house. I can take care of myself.
Hard to do. Brian.
So coming back to the performance issue, part of good performance when it comes to the use of tax dollars is asking good questions to make well-informed decisions. And so when we have a project, for example, and there's contracts involved and change orders come forward and those are being considered by our Board of Commissioners, we should be asking good hard questions. We should be finding out, was there an error or an omission by the design professional that we paid to do that work? Was there a discovered condition? What caused this additional cost? Those are questions I don't hear being asked. They need to be.
One item I didn't touch on also was the hiring and training costs associated when there's a retention issue in departments. That can run 35 to 40% of an annual salary when you start having turnover in an office. That is a big number. Just looking at what we can do to keep our trained employees that we already have on staff at the county, that leads to a large savings in itself.